I would hope so, because I think it speaks not just to an American audience or a South African audience about South Africa, but it speaks to the human condition and who we are as people and how we treat each other.
Basically, I like to start with 2 crunches and end with 2.
Hello, this is Lonnie Stark of Stark Silver Creek, and we're here in the rehearsal hall for the Sounds A Rep with the cast of the latest production, Groundswell. I'm here with Peter, Dwight, Scott, who are the 3 characters in this play, Groundswell, as well as the director, Kirsten. Kirsten, what's this play about? It's sort of interesting. It's actually based in South Africa.
Right. So Groundswell is about 3 men on the west coast of South Africa. It takes place in modern-day South Africa, so post-apartheid, but the ripples of apartheid sort of still reverberate through this play. It's definitely about a country trying to figure out their own identity. So we have 3 different men sort of stuck in the middle of nowhere, coming together to kind of figure out who they all are.
I mean, these 3 guys have very different backgrounds. I mean, Smith is a South African Brit. Tommy is Xhosa. He's a black South African tribal, and Johan is Afrikaan, which is Dutch background, South African. So the history of those 3 classes and races throughout South Africa is varied, and they're very different. So yeah, we've done a fair amount of research on who those people are and what their backgrounds would have been, how they would have grown up, how they sound. Certainly, it's 3 different accents.
How does your accent sound? Let's hear it a little bit.
Smith he's a Brit, so he talks with a rather standard British accent, which we would call RP, received pronunciation, in the theatre.
Great.
How do you sound, Tommy? Speak for us.
My character is really South African, so the accent work was really helpful to watch a couple of the films we got to watch, a couple of documentaries, to really get sort of the real essence. But if I was going to do my voice, I would start to talk like this. You see, it's a bit different working on the cadences. It was really nice to have Miss Hill, Kimberly Hill, come in and really work with us pretty intensively. Through the Edith Skinner standard variety, and also just sort of working with us individually on the sounds, and so that was really a big part of it.
You mentioned some of the films you watched. Was it about the apartheid, or was it more about the sort of diamond trade? Because both of those have a very interesting and colored history.
Yeah, I would say we mostly focused on the apartheid issue and really trying to get the social and economic status of the people in our story and related them to what we saw in the movie. We didn't get to see too much on the Diamond Divers, but there is a new movie coming out about that that's supposed to be really good.
Coming out about the time we open. It's actually called The Last of the Diamond Divers.
Yeah. Okay.
There's a trailer that you can get online, and we watched that, and more of the diamond stuff that we looked at was more about the smuggling, the informal market, if you will. But I think the reason we focused mainly on apartheid is because even though we're 15 years removed from it, and everybody just, apartheid's over, everything's hunky-dory, it's fantastic. Well, the reality is it's not. Not much has actually changed, and in the research that we found, in some ways it may even be worse for the people that live there now, because they're still, as Kirsten said, just really grappling with, 15 years is nothing. A new democracy, I mean, we're 200 years, we still don't know what we're doing. So for these people, trying to break down an institutionalized class warfare, a class system that was institutionalized, and trying to just say, well, now you get this and you get this, but how do you without the fundamental infrastructure to apply any of this stuff, people are still on the outside looking in. And I think that the 3 characters in the play are representations, somewhat allegorical representations, but they are real people. They're colorful and they're funny and they're human. So we're not just up here being statues for the political ideas of the playwright, not in any way, shape, or form. But I think that we all do represent the struggle for identity in South Africa, and we all have our own idea about what it should be and how we should be treated now, how things should be different. And that's the clash that happens in real time over the course of one evening in the show?
This play is a couple years old. It was done in South Africa. It was also done in the Netherlands, and then it was done in New York. So it is, I think it's 2 years, 2006? 2006.
It's 3 years old.
So 3 years old, and it just earlier this year was in New York. So this is the second U.S. production to happen.
You know, before this, you kind of have a world sort of understanding, but I've never really done any intense, in-depth, really looking at South Africa besides just knowing the terms apartheid and Mandela. And you can sort of have a miniature timeline in your own head, but I was sort of young when this was all still going on. So yeah, it's really been helpful to, at the age of 30, to go back and really read some real material about it.
So it's going to be a struggle for them, and but I don't think their struggle is that dissimilar from a lot of the things that we're facing in our country today. You know, we like to think that we're progressive, and we like to think that we're open, and we don't have the race issues but we, you know, institutionalized, you know, poverty, the race issues. You can see it in the current political situation. People throwing mud at each other over that. They're using the R word. You know, I don't think that. I think people will identify, an American audience will identify not just with the fact that, well, these poor South Africans, but I think they will see themselves mirrored sometimes when they view this. I would hope so, because I think it speaks not just to an American audience or a South African audience about South Africa, but it speaks to the human condition and who we are as people and how we treat each other.
Smith is the wealthier white businessman, and the thing that you have to understand is that when you deal with a society that's had the amount of oppression that South Africa has lived under for 50 some odd years or longer, when you try to correct that kind of oppression through things like affirmative action and quotas and that kind of stuff, somebody ultimately gets hurt because of that. White people get pushed out of jobs that, you know, black South Africans will now take. That creates an enormous amount of bitterness and resentment, and that's one of the problems that continues in South Africa right now. There's a tremendous bitterness. You know, people moving out of the country, people, you know, dealing with the fact that they're out of jobs and that they've lost income, and their families are leaving the country.
Their unemployment rate is one of the highest in the industrialized world.
So,
it's really, really
you know,
high.
For Smith, this character who he lives with this, he's trying to deal with this resentment that, you know, he's been unjustly treated. In his
I see.
mind.
So he actually is playing a role of someone who bears some of this resentment from being, okay.
He is, that's his character. He's
Okay.
the guy who has been removed from his position because of affirmative action. Mm-hmm. So he brings that point of view to the play, and it's a very valid, interesting point of view. You know, is there an answer to those questions? Come see the play and find it.
Super plug. Very nice.
So this is the rehearsal hall, and this is where actually it's interesting. It's a complete sort of duplicate in terms of dimensions as the stage that other people will see. How was it like, Kirsten, so far directing these three men in this play?
Hi, guys. Plug your ears. I'm having a great time with them.
Okay.
They're really tough. No, they bring so much to the table when you're dealing with sort of a realistic play like this. And this play has a lot of unity of time. So once you start, there's only 2 scenes. So once you start, how the scene gets to the end of that one moment, or the one scene, it really depends on what energy they bring at the start. And so it's kind of an endurance test for these guys at times.
There's no intermission, right?
There's no intermission, but it's also, if I'm going to run a scene, I'm like, okay, we got to bring it back to this point where we rev up and go. And they're game to just jump in.
The latest production, Groundswell. I'm here with Scott, Peter.
That's why it's going to be 45
This is going to give the
minutes.
blooper reel. Just start with the names.